I would like to introduce Christoph Keese here, and I'm taking your job a little bit, Sarah. I'm sorry about it. You can do it a lot better. But it's just so very fitting. I'm very, very excited. He's here. He's a journalist and the executive vice president of Axel Springer. And he wrote a widely acclaimed book about an industry and an area where exactly what I have just described has taken place and is taking place. Change was embraced by those affected most by this change. And they shaped it, and thereby they stayed on top. And of course I'm talking about Silicon Valley, and of course the reference is that Germany could be Photonics Valley. It is Photonics Valley, and we hope that through our work in our workshops, it will stay Photonics Valley. So Christoph Keese, I hope you're here. There you are. I didn't see you. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Darf ich den Klicker haben? Danke.
Thank you.
So thank you, Stefan. Thank you for coming and for being here. I think this is very exciting, and I really enjoyed your talk because it's talk about technology, and it's so important to be on top of technology and to really understand what's happening. Can you flip to my slides, please, so I can show them? Okay, just go ahead. I wrote a book about my time in Silicon Valley, and I wrote a new book which just came out this week. It's called Silicon Germany, How We Can Catch Up. Because what really troubled me after coming back from Silicon Valley is how far we are behind in digital and in disruption here in this country. Karlsruhe might be an exception, but the rest of the country is really behind. I think we lost about 10 years in technology and digitalization, especially on the internet. Just a short look at my company. This is not to boast, this is just to say that we have really adapted to the digital challenge. On the left side you can see our digital sales, and on the right side our digital operating profits. They have risen quite significantly, and this is the share we enjoy today. So roughly 2/3 of our revenue and profit today is digital. Now, Silicon Valley, may I ask who has been to Silicon Valley from this audience? Okay, roughly 50% have been there. It's quite interesting for those who have not been there. It's very, very small. It's smaller than, for example, the Rhine-Ruhr area. It's smaller than Berlin, actually. When you measure it upwards, it's only 40 kilometers long, and it's just 10 kilometers wide. And it's just 2.5 million people there. And 50, 60 years ago, it was an orchard. They were pretty much raising or growing walnuts and oranges. And today, it's such a powerful center. In 2013, we, as 4 executives of the company, went to this house. We rented a house and lived there. And even though I have been in digitalization from the beginning of the 90s, I must say for myself that I only began to understood how Silicon Valley works after having spent 6 months there. It's pretty complicated, and let me give you like a couple of insights into my takeaways. First of all, a couple of numbers. Obviously, the Silicon Valley is the epicenter of digitalization. There's lots of creativity, great universities, but the most important number, I think, is the number of venture capital spent in that area. Just look at the number. It's $16 billion of venture capital in the United States in last year, 50% of which, 32.5 billion, go into Silicon Valley. And for those of you who have been there, they are all located in one single street. It's adjacent to Stanford University. So when you as a student on the lawn on Saturday have an idea and you start coding on Sunday, you go to Sand Hill Road on Monday, which is, as I said, adjacent to university, and pick up a check for pre-seed funding, $10,000, $20,000, and you take it from there. This is an infrastructure, financing infrastructure that we simply don't have. Let's look at the comparable numbers for Germany. Germany just had 700 million in venture capital last year, 100 million of which was public money. So just compare the numbers. This shows one of our biggest problems over here. Just look at an app, a service like MyTaxi. MyTaxi was invented 1.5 years before Uber was invented. 1.5 years, and it never took off because they were only able to collect 20 million euros here in Germany, while Uber, as you know, collected billions, and this made them the world market leader. But Berlin made a surprising renaissance as a startup capital, renaissance because end of the 19th century was already very successful. Today, 50% of all venture capital investments in Germany go to Berlin, and 30% of all German startups, 2,000, are located in Berlin. That's a great success, but it's still not enough because all of Western Europe doesn't have a startup culture that is even close to Silicon Valley. The next big thing from here is Israel. Just look at the numbers. Israel, just 8 million inhabitants, but 3.6 billion in venture capital. The number I found really amazing last year was that on NASDAQ, the American high-tech exchange, there were more IPOs of Israeli tech companies than of American tech companies. There were 67 Israeli tech companies going public last year, not in Israel, but in NASDAQ. And none from Europe, and none from Germany. This can't stay this way. And if the Israelis can do it, if Israel can do it, we can definitely do it. But we need, as Stefan said, we definitely need to change. Now, you talked about technology. I will come back to technology, but let me go to business first, because there are two governing principles that are very important to understand. It's disruption and its platform economy. Let me come to disruption first. Everybody uses the word, but what does it really mean? This is a picture from the 60s, hippies. It's no coincidence that the startup center today is exactly at the same place that the hippies were in the 60s, because these two movements have a thing in common. The thing is, they want to change the world to the better. They want to revolutionize, and they're attacking the establishment. This is what they did, and they had a concept called love. And today, their children and grandchildren are attacking with a different concept and much more successful, not culturally maybe, but business-wise, and the concept is disruption. Now, when you talk about disruption in Germany, you hear so many times, yes, we are disruptive because we have all this great innovation, but disruption and innovation are not the same thing. It's like apple and fruit. That one thing, the apple is part of the fruit. Disruption is just one form of innovation. We in Germany are very good at so-called incremental, evolutionary innovation, but not in disruptive innovation. Let me give you one example from the music industry. The vinyl record. This was a great innovation, but it certainly was not disruptive. Why? Because here you needed pressing factories, and for this one you also needed pressing factory. You just needed to put out the old presses, put in the new ones. Here you needed stores, and here you also need stores. So the old ecosystem stayed intact. So it was incremental but not disruptive. This is disruptive. Who has a WhatsApp? WhatsApp of Spotify. Who has a Spotify subscription? It's almost all the room, right? As you know, it can come for free, but if you're willing to pay 10 euros, you can have offline and download mode. Now, just do the math, right? This is 17 euro, and the average amount of songs on one CD is 10. So you're paying 1.7 euros per song. Here, you have millions of songs, millions, almost the entire repertoire of the world, for just 10 euros. So per song, it's a fraction of a cent. This is very, very disruptive. You don't need pressing anymore, you don't need stores anymore, and everybody makes much less money per song. So this is very disruptive. Now, the professor who first explained the concept of disruption versus incremental change is, of course, Clayton Christensen. It's a well-known book, but even when talking to economists in this country here in Germany, I always find, or many times find, that the book simply has not been read. The concept is not known, which is really strange. So all of you probably know this, but let me just shortly remind you of two central theses from the book. First of all, Christensen describes disruptive innovation as a process where a simple product or service starts at the lower end of the market and slowly works its way upwards to take the place of the legacy company. That's very important because there are two factors in there. It's a simple product at the lower end of the market. We in Germany, we tend to do premium products and we never notice what's happening at the lower end of the market at a very simple price. So our typical reaction to disruption is laughter. We laugh at disruption. We don't take it for serious until it puts us out of business. So we must be much more aware. And the second thing is, companies are being taken hostage by their customers. Management takes rational decisions that prove to be fatal to the organization in the long run. So look at the typical car companies. Cars are developing a new iteration of the old car. Yes, it will be better, but it will be selling at a very high price. It is running into the same problems. It doesn't make traffic lights go away. It doesn't make traffic jams go away. It binds a lot of money that we as consumers have to put into the car, and we only use it for 5% of the time. So streets are congested, but all the capital investment in the cars are standing around for 95% of the time. So how can this capital allocation be used in a more efficient way? This is what disruption is all about, sharing economy. All disruption in the world has one thing in common. It never comes from those people working in a specific industry. Media industry is being disrupted by people who never worked for media. Television is reinvented by Reed Hastings, who never worked for media before he started Netflix. And of course, the people doing Uber and Get and MyTaxi never worked for the car industry. Platforms, and this is the second word I want to talk about, platforms rule the digital economy. Producers and services are being put out of business and to the side. Just have a look at this. Uber, sorry for this being in German, but Uber, the biggest taxi company in the world, doesn't own taxis. Airbnb, luckily we have invested early in Airbnb as Axel Springer. Airbnb is renting out more beds per night in the United States than the Hilton Group, and it doesn't own real estate. Very painful for me, Facebook today is the biggest media company in the world. It shows more articles and more journalistic videos to the audience than any other news outlet. 2 years ago, I wouldn't have dreamt of putting this sentence on a slide, because 2 years ago, Facebook was not the biggest media outlet in the world. Today it is. It doesn't produce any content. Now, all these platforms converge to monopolies. That's very important to understand. In a network economy, monopolies are the natural thing to happen. Just a number that was in Handelsblatt this week. This is the share, the market share of the top 10 e-commerce companies in Germany, right? This is typical for the network economy. You have somebody owning the market by 51%. When you look at other markets, Google in search, for example, Google's market share in search in Germany is 95% right now. Amazon is, I hope, the best for Otto and Zalando and Cyberport, but probably the Amazon market share is to rise above 51%. So this is what you have, monopolies, it's winner takes it all markets. Very important to understand when you do business on the web. So this obviously raises the question, can one disrupt itself? So when I talk to German companies, established companies, what I always hear is, okay, I understand the concept, disruption platform. So what I'm putting together now is the group of the brightest people in my company. I put them away to a hideaway. We do an offsite and come back with a long list of disruptive ideas. Try it, but it will never work. It never works. You cannot disrupt yourself. Why? It's virtually impossible to disrupt your own business because we all know the restrictions that lead to the way business is being run today. This makes us blind. We construct these systems in legacy companies, and therefore we cannot see its flaws anymore. So when trying to disrupt your company, don't try to do it yourself. This is why the startup economy, and by the way, this is why venture capital is so hugely important, because disruptive energy will only come to this country through startups. Only conferences like this have the potential to boom up innovation, disruptive innovation in the country. So we need the intellectual input from startups, and we need money to be put into the startup system, much more than we're putting in today. Silicon Valley has become the world markets leader in disruption and scalable models. How did they do this? When I lived in Silicon Valley, these are the kind of key attributes I would put to Silicon Valley. It's amazing speed. So, first idea to product on the market, 6 weeks. Summer vacation in Stanford is 3 months, so many students I know in Stanford do 2 startups in a row during their summer vacation. 6 weeks. Now, just when you work in a legacy company, just do the reality check. How much time do you need in a legacy company to come up with an idea and to make it happen? There's a great amount of passion. Most founders I know are not really after the money. The becoming rich is like collateral damage. But what they really want to do is they want to solve a real big problem and help make the world better. It's technology. In most German startups as of today, business people or people having studied business like run the show. EPS, WHU University are really, it's good that they put in the input, but what the next stage of innovation in Germany has to come from engineers. In Silicon Valley, you hardly find any startups that within the founding team has a business person. 2 engineers, 3 engineers coming together founding the company is the typical thing. Why? You need a CFO, but why give him shares? What does a CFO contribute to the company's success? Almost nothing. Too little. At least little enough not to give him shares. So what we need is a culture in Germany where students of technology go out and found companies. Yes, it's happening, but it's not happening enough. So what we need is a culture of professors in universities encouraging their students, don't be hired by Siemens. Nothing against Siemens, but try to do it yourself. Try to found your own company. An incredible openness. Germans always have this idea of, I have this great idea and it could be stolen, so I better shut up and don't tell anybody. Silicon Valley is the other way around. I have an idea. I talk to everybody, including my competitors. If you talk to specialists who work in your company, you will be caught in a filter bubble because these people are on board the same ship. They will not challenge your concept. They will try to fight your concept through. You can only be challenged if you're not working in the company. And everybody who is an expert in that field and is not working in your company, by definition, is your competitor. So in order to challenge your concept, you must talk to your competitor. Challenge yourself. Put yourself into open dialogue with everybody else. Entrepreneurial spirit, I talked about. Venture capital, I talked about. Shooting for the moon, very important. Now, let me give you an example. I'm at a company in Silicon Valley trying to raise money to produce a software that helps banks to run the business more efficient. Banking software. They didn't find funding. Rightly so, because that's not a moonshot. But many companies find funding that want to destroy banks. They want to put banks out of business. When you try to put banks out of business, Silicon Valley will give you money. Software for banking is not funded. Software for, or the approach to destroying a bank is being funded. And I think we need this moonshot thinking back in Germany. We are always working on these small little scheme iterations to make little things a little better. We need a different approach. We need to really solve great problems. Yes, failure rate will be high. Failure rate in Silicon Valley is 90%, but the 10% who go through transform the economy, transform society, and really help to make the world better. So what do we feel when we hear Larry Page and Sergey Brin trying to abolish death? This is what they're working on. Alphabet, one of the projects within Alphabet, Google's mother company, is trying to abolish death. This is definitely a moonshot. Or the Hyperloop project of Elon Musk, going from Los Angeles to Tokyo in a train in a couple of hours under the Pacific Ocean. Great idea. Probably it's almost improbable, but some of them succeed. So what we need back in Germany desperately is this spirit of having a great idea which sounds fantastic and trying to push it through. Because our forefathers, end of the 19th centuries, had these crazy ideas. And the companies we're living off today are exactly the companies that these people founded. So let's not be too shy and too timid. And platform, of course, I talked about. If we try to do this combined with technology, I think this country has everything we need, but we have to wake up, we have to take the challenge, and we have to start founding and financing companies. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Christoph, Keese. Thank you.